Welcome everybody to another episode of Waiting Wisdom. Today with Ian Bode on the beautiful bank of the River Spey in Scotland. And Ian, very fittingly, we're going to talk about salmon fishing or spey fishing, right?
Absolutely. Aye. What else would you talk about as the banks of the River Spey?
Yeah. It's beautiful. And you brought two big reels that you fish, and I said they're click-and-pawl.
Yes, click-and-pawl reels. When I mean, this is the beat that I was brought up on, Leo, and when I came here first, the only reels that you really saw, this was in the sort of 80s, the only reels that really you saw were Hardy Perfects and Hardy Markless. That was it. That was it. And so it was just the reels that I was brought up with and I enjoy using. And from a Gillian perspective, I really like the sound of them, because it's interesting as well. When people went on to the silent reels, as a guide, we were netting the fish.
Yeah.
And you had no idea what the guy was doing with the reel, you see. So when you had the click and pull reel, your ears were telling you everything. You didn't need to look around to see what the guy was doing. It was all about using all the senses, and so you could hear. So when the guy's on the forward wind, you could hear he was on the forward wind. And when the fish was taking line, like you could hear, that's the case, sir. So it's a reel that I really enjoy fishing with, I love the sound of salmon fishing. I think that sound is sound that is synonymous with salmon fishing.
Very nice.
That's it. It's nice, And so, yes, for sure, I know that the break reels are probably better in so many ways. So I played salmon, but this one's I still like playing salmon.
I heard people say, though, that it's your experience with the click-and-pawl reel. Yes. It's not even a disadvantage. It's not what you do.
It is absolutely not. I was in Alta fishing with Andy, funnily enough, a few years back, and I had 3 really lovely fish in the high 20s, 30 pounds worth this, and everyone on the trip said, that'll be no good for that big fish. It was no problem. Absolutely no. And ironically, a big fish that I lost was one when I changed reels to a silent reel and a break, and because it had no resistance on the forward line, which a lot of them don't have, at the end of the day, that's why I lost the fish. It's a much longer story, which we'll not get in yet. But it's a good story.
It's a good point that you're making. On the same note, right? I mean, back in the days, people used to catch really big salmon.
Yeah.
I do, so they must have had a way of landing them anyway.
They did, and I mean the old guys there on Alta for sure. They loved the sound of these reels, because that took them back to their youth. So it's nice. It's nice to be nostalgic. It's also nice when you're in a place like that to be using probably the best tackle you got when you're after a fish release too. This is the big one. So this is the number one. So these reels are all made for us. Everything. What I love about this is everything's made in the UK. Even that screw is turned in the guy's workshop, Every single part of this reel is turned in that man's workshop. So I really kind of like that, and I do like to be trying to support, because we've got so much stuff coming from the Far East now, which is great, and I'm a supporter of that as well, in some terms, but this, no, I like the fact that it's made in the UK, and the size of the reel. So this is a 4-inch one. 4-inch, it's quite a large arbor reel. It holds a lot of backing, that one. So that's the one that I would be using if I was fishing, say this kind of rod that we have here. This is the rod that I had. Again, it's a specially made bespoke rod that I had made here in the UK for fishing the Alta River. And at the end of the day, a 14-foot 6 rod, I would be using this big number 1 reel on it.
Yeah.
It's equivalent or slightly bigger than the Hardy Marquis number 2 of this one. So, but because nowadays we tend to use much smaller rods as well for a lot of the time now. So gone are the days where we're fishing with 15-foot rods, as we had when I first came here. And now we're using much more rods of 13-foot 6, 12-foot 6 even,
Why is that, for example?
Well, the lines are now, I mean, again, if we went back to the 1980s when I started, everything was 15 foot. That was a go-to road. All the lanes were either 30 yards or 40 yards, double taper. That was it. That was what you had. And that if it was a sink tip lane, you had the sink tip on either side, and basically that was it. So when we talked about distance of casting, for instance, nobody was really too much bothered about distance of casting at that time. It was really all about fishing the pools and how to fish the pools. That was it. Nobody worried about casting away to the other side and who could cast the furthest. Da. But now, since the spey lines game and the shooting heads game, they make covering the river so much easier. I mean, so much easier. And to be frank, in all the rivers, we don't have the same water volume as we once had as well. So the rivers got smaller. If we were looking back to the 80s, I've often said most of the fish that I've ever seen hooked in my life were hooked between casting a line length of between 18 and about 22 yards. No more than that, maybe even 50. So nowadays, what we do, the small roads, they make fishing really so much easier. And what I do to my clients anyway, I try and get them onto these short roads because I say to them, look, when we were fishing with the 15-foot roads, but with the new lines, everyone wanted to throw a line to the far side. People forgot how to fish because they'd just become obsessed with casting, and that was it. And so with the shorter roads, it takes focus back into the fishing zone. And that's what I really like about fishing now. With 12-foot 6 rods, if you're a good caster, 13-foot 6 rods, they're much lighter, of course, as well. So a lot of the people we have in salmon fishing tend to be elderly people. So for the, yeah, absolutely, yeah. 30-foot 6, 30-foot, 12-foot 6, easy.
I think it's very interesting differentiation we make to be, where to cast and how to catch fish. As I occupied sea up to the trout fishing, right? You will try to cast to the other bank where the trout off the pole beats.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And you're like, I can do the casting. But though, whether you want to be a good fly caster or
no question. The two are very, very different, no doubt about it. And I mean, the good fisherman, I mean, that he studies. He asks questions and he studies. The internet, in some ways, has been very good for the good fisherman because it's a much easier way of studying. There's not some, well, I would say not so much bullshit, plenty of bullshit on there as well. But what happens is that nobody can hide from me again, So all the information's out there. And so if I wanted to go, funnily enough, I was just speaking to a guy today about this, very fine. And we were speaking about retirement. If I wanted to go and catch, and my life depended on catching salmon, even in this condition, even right now, I would fancy my chances. I would fancy my chances because I would know where to go. I would know the best place. I was doing myself more than it, and I was mobile. Then I could move from river to river, from place to place. The availability is there now. I would know right now if I needed to catch a fish in this river, I would be doing at the lower part of it, given these conditions. So I would do what I can to get on there. Then I would talk to the people down there. That's where my fish thief start. That's where my thought process start. Having knowledge, yes.
Also, I think, when I remember about my beginnings with salmon fishing, I basically started on the ladder. I was right. And I remember the guy teaching me the game back there always start at the very top of the very short line, and I on two of my figures. It was having a roll cap. I just laid out the line. So I'm totally with you that I think it's way more important to study the river, understand where the fish holes, high water, no water. Those such as they give.
It's massive. This pool that we're at is an absolute classic example of it. We have a situation where you have a shallow run into a relatively shallow pool. What happens is the fish come up and they just nose that shallow bar up there and they just sit in there. And then they sit in, honestly, 18 inches of water. And I have like some memorable fish. We guided here for quite a few years. Memorable fish for people. What I say to them, look, take fly off the road, shut the don't you pull anything off the light, just off the beat, just put it there and let that kaboom. I said, look, it's got a nice nips. Set. Get on it right, take your feet, just the line for the nail in it,
And it's all about doing the likely to be, no question. Don't wait and wait. Stop.
Sure, but massively, but people again that don't too much emphasis on it. But if, for instance, that guy that day had decided to wade 2 meters further, the fly would never have came to the fish. He would have just scared the fish away, So it's very important, and a big part of being successful in salmon fishing, the wading lines and length of the light, for sure, no question. Yeah.
And if we talk about lines, one thing that I found a little difficult sometimes, if you fish a shooting head, for example, and you start out very short, like he says, times he did, pented and dived down, that's just, well, wait,
I mean, it's not, I mean, from my personal experience here is mainly with spayline, so when I fished a lot here and when I gillied a lot here, nearly all the spayline. So the last, I would think, maybe 10 years, I've seen more shooting heads. I didn't like them when they came in first. There were too many knots for me. There were too many, also when you try a fishing gills type, kick it, and I didn't like it at all, So for me, no, I mean, as far as playing a fish or what we're talking about, short line stuff. So get yourself a fine spayline, and you won't have to worry about any of that.
Okay, Ian, we were just talking about fishing shallow water, shallow line.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a thing that people, when they're fishing for salmon, they make that mistake so many times, Leo. They just walk into the river and forget about this first part that they have to fish, and very often you'll find a fish right in the shallow water. And I was saying the other year, 2 years ago, the Kobe Ian one cast, because I had 6 salmon with my very first cast. And when I say my very first cast, I mean just flicking out the length of the leader. If the fish are at your feet, there's no point in wading in amongst them, that especially if you know that they might be there, and so there is that. So I think people forget about the fact that salmon are wild and you have to use still, I think if you have local knowledge, that's the key for salmon fishing for me. It really is the key. If you've got someone who's got good local knowledge that wants to impart that knowledge, sometimes a Scottish gilly, and I'll be contentious here, but sometimes a Scottish gilly, he won't impart that knowledge to you. And it's almost because there's a shyness about him, there's always that. But generally speaking, if the angler asks, then he will go into big detail, and the more questions he asks, the deeper an answer he'll get,
Yeah, and you said, when you start out, you start short. Is there also an approach you have when it comes to picking flies?
My flies with salmon, my whole idea of the salmon is I'm not a particular fly guy. I think a fresh salmon that's right from the sea, if he's got sea lice on him and he's stopped in your pool and your fly goes close to him, he's probably going to take it. However, there are times when he's been in the pool and he's maybe seen quite a few different flies, and I think that a different shape of a fly and I think a different size of a fly is really quite good. We used to have, when we had a lot of fish in here, the numbers that we was talking about earlier, very often you would go down the pool and a fish would come and rise at the fly. You would see this boil, we used to call it, when we're suffers. And that was pretty much because there were quite a lot of fish there, and the fish were going at the fly because there was an element of competition with the other fish, so they would come and have a real leak. So in that scenario, we would tend to go into a smaller fly. So we'd go down in size, and often you would get the first to come again. It was really exciting. And as the guide, if we were in the boat, I would pull the boat up a yard or two, and then we'd try something else over it. I'll maybe move the boat slightly out with the knowledge of the angler. I'll move this boat a little bit offline so that the fly fished a wee bit faster over the fish. Yeah. And we'd try all sorts of things, but very often you would get back to the first maybe you had the thing and you never take it, so but yes, in the springtime, yellow and black flies are very, very popular. They call them barley sugar. When I started here, no one would know that term now. They're much more attuned to this monkey fly, which it was basically just a black and yellow with a slightly longer tail. But black and yellow seem to do really good in the spring, where the orange colours seem to do really good at the back end.
And in terms of size, I've been talking 1 inch, 2 inch.
So in the springtime, so when we started, we would start fishing with tubes, willy gun type tubes, yellow, orange, black, mixtures of that. You cannot go wrong. If you were fishing in the Spey or pretty much any other Scottish river, mixtures of yellow, orange, and black. You can't go wrong. Doesn't matter how you mix them. They just mix that colours, like the German flag. That's it, but size-wise, you would basically start with depending on your water, of course, clarity of the water, height of the water, temperature, 3-inch tube at the beginning, and as the season developed, so that would just begin to get smaller, But some people, including myself, some people would be very happy to put on a much smaller fly when you should be fishing a big fly, When the book says fish a big fly, I always find through that salmon love something different. And if they're in a pool, maybe resting in a pool, or they come in hard to catch, give them something different. And by something different, I mean something really different, Fish the fly differently. Come from a different depth, fish it fast, fish it high, fish it big, fish it small.
Yeah.
Drop it. My dad was a great fan of the dropper. A lot of the really good fishermen that I know, they really like fishing a dropper,
What would they for salmon dropper?
So just a smaller fly, so you put a bigger fly on the point. My dad's favourite thing on the dropper was always a very sparsely dressed, like logie or blue charm or something like this. And I tell you what he did catch as well on the River Devon. He caught so many salmon in a night in a size 16 black spider.
Almost like in Iceland.
Like in Iceland.
All the
Tiny little flies.
Yeah.
Because he was happy to fish them. People said to me, should we fish with a hitch fly here? I said, what fly? Why would you not fish with a hitch fly? And I remember one time the grills were hot. There were quite a few grills here. It was summertime, first week in July. And the guests went away to their lunch, and the guide said to me, go and have a go. And I had the put on a hitch, get on a hitch and see, well, that was I had three fish with a hitch. It was great. We had them all in the hitch in the afternoon. We had a great afternoon, okay, so it was good. Yeah. And another time I remember that working really well was with a guy down in Rothes. And he'd been in Iceland, but spoke about the same things. Do this Icelandic flies work here? Yeah, I says, of course they do, Oh, I says, I love that hitch. I said, well, you're on Beaky this morning. It's the best pool in Rothes. I said, why not just fish it down with the hitch right for the word go? Because what happens with all these things is that the new thing is never tried until nothing else is working. Yeah. It's always tried as a last resort. Try it as a first resort. Then you'll find out whether it'll work or not, Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Great. Ian, I think we covered a lot of stuff. One last question I have for you, looking at this big old net, because I know, some people say tailor salmon, beaches salmon, as ladder with the net, I guess, I know it depends whether you're fishing on your own or with the Ophelia or guide, right?
Of course.
Do you have a rule of thumb there?
Nowadays, because we're practicing catch and release, it's really important that we handle the fish properly, Leo. You don't want to, handling the fish as well as we possibly can. We are fishing at the end of the day,
Yeah.
We are trying to catch a fish. We're trying to bring it ashore, and obviously trying to get the hook out in an easy way. If you have a guide, I would say that nowadays the rubber nets are without a doubt the thing to have, and for sure trying to keep the fish in the water is good. However, if you're on your own, then sometimes that's not possible, and so at the end of the day, if you're on your own, fishing something to think with single hooks is quite a good thing because you can release the hook out of the fish that wee bit better. Making sure that you've got forceps, making sure that you have got forceps, because again, if you've played the fish out, you're obviously, if you're on your own, going to play the fish out a wee bit longer, before you can bring it ashore, so make sure you take that hook out really quickly. And I would say, if it swallowed the hook, if it's down, just let it go with the hook, it will get rid of it, or one thing for sure, that will stand a better chance, But I think if you're on your own, ideally, try and keep the fish wet, you can, even along its flank. But to do that, unfortunately, you have to then clay the fish well out, So that's when a single hook is easy, especially if you're fishing on your own. If the gilly's there and you have it in the net and you forceps, you can keep it in the water, you can get it out easily. So, we have to be responsible. The way that we're doing now is, right? 100 is it. Great question.
Ian,
Question.
that was a lovely chat.
Yes.
I'd love to fish this beat one day with you. We will make it happen. But
You'll need to.
it looks great, and even like you said, the numbers are down a little, but there's so much heritage here. Such a beautiful landscape.
Fantastic. Well, I have, funnily enough, I've got an Austrian group in next week fishing here, and I've got an American group fishing down at Rotas, and a Spanish group coming there as well. So very international this week.
Great. I hope you got it.
Yeah, we'll see how it'll work.
Great. Ian,
Thanks a lot.